This week we're going to talk about Martisor. You have some good readings in this week's resources section, so I encourage you to take a look at that. It gives a little background, explains why people in this area celebrate it, and some of the traditions surrounding it. What I want to show you is just a walk that I took. It was actually on International Women's Day, which is March 8th. Virtually no one was working on March 8th or 9th. They were both considered holidays this year, national holidays. And so I thought there'd be a lot of people out. So I had heard about this park, and I thought it might be a chance, since I had an afternoon free on a Thursday, which is normally when I've been teaching. I thought I would go out to this park and look around a little bit. I heard there was a nice lake out there, so I jumped on the number 104 bus and paid my 3 lei, which is about 30 cents. And in 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, I was out at the park. Now, I didn't really know there was an amusement park there, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but these first few slides are really what I was looking for, was some of the nature and the lakes. And I thought maybe there would be more flowers and things because it's springtime, but it's not quite there yet. But I'll show you what I did find. I did find some really beautiful scenery, some of which you've seen. As you can see here, as you saw in an earlier picture, the water was reflecting the trees and the golden colors of these plants that are around the lake. I saw a couple interesting animals as well. And I hope you can tell, they kind of pose for me, but it's a little tricky when you're talking about animals. But the squirrel is sitting there. The interesting thing about this squirrel, it's got nice coloring, but the really interesting thing about this squirrel is its ears. Look at how big its ears are. The squirrels in New England, at any rate, and in Ohio that I'm familiar with from growing up, don't have ears like this. These ears are significantly bigger than the ears that I'm familiar with on squirrels in America, although there may be parts of America that I'm not familiar with the squirrels. In the next slide here, you see the same sort of thing. That's a crow. Now in America, as far as I know, crows I'm familiar with are all pure black. Here, they have this mixture of black and gray and white. And I don't know if you can tell, his beak actually has a French fry in it, but the beaks of the crows over here instead of being black or white, which I found sort of interesting as well. It was nice for these animals to pose for me. They stayed long enough for me to take these pictures and then took off, but they did give me plenty of time. I did find some really beautiful scenery. This one was a little loop walk. As you can see, there are people walking there. There's a little trail back through there. There were people having picnics. They were cooking shashlik, or what we would call shish kebab. I've put a couple pieces. There were probably half a dozen pieces of different art statues that were there. As you can see, these are very good examples of the type of statuary that you found a lot in the former Soviet Union. At the end of this path, I saw another one that went up a little hill, so I followed that. I actually went by this mosaic, which is on the back of a wall that surrounded this theater that I'm showing you pictures of right now. Then there was a little restaurant sitting there. Not sure if that's open in the summer or not, but it wasn't open now with these little statues. It's clearly an area that's oriented toward children and children's activities. And then off in the distance, I saw the Ferris wheel. As I discuss the Ferris wheel a little bit, I will go through some of the other slides that I took while I was in this little amusement park. The Ferris wheel really had a couple levels of significance for me. Number one, I think I actually included this Ferris wheel in an earlier slideshow. As I was driving by it with Vitaly, we were on a minibus going somewhere else at the time, and I believe I took a picture of it. At that point, he had told me that the amusement park associated with this Ferris wheel was still very much the way it was during the Soviet Union, and that I should get over here to see this at some point. I hadn't really thought about this in connection with the park, but thinking about it after I was in there and saw the Ferris wheel, I realized how these things fit together because I was in Botanica at the time when Vitaly told me before. The other significance of the Ferris wheel, for those of you who don't know me, is that I really don't like heights. I don't like getting on a ladder to go on my roof when I need to. I really just don't like heights. And so when I saw this Ferris wheel, I realized that although I don't like height, I'm in Moldova, and from the top of that Ferris wheel, I would be able to get some great pictures. And so, in spite of my hesitancy about heights, and in spite of the fact that this was a Soviet-era Ferris wheel, which didn't give me a lot of confidence in it, I knew that I had to get on it to take some pictures. And so, after purchasing my ticket for 12 lei, which is just under $1, I approached with some trepidation, got on, and went around. The way this worked is it was really designed to give you a view. It went very slowly. You actually got on it while it was moving, and you stayed on it for one rotation. There are Ferris wheels like this in the United States. It's different than those kind of Ferris wheels that you get on and then maybe go around and then they stop and let everybody off. This is you're on it for one full rotation, and it just goes very slowly so you can see everything. But I did get some good pictures, so I am just going to rotate through these pictures. It gives you an idea of how flat it is there. You can see some of the hills in the distance and some of the buildings. I took pictures from all sides. You'll see that I took pictures down. And actually, the last pictures that you'll see, as I started to come down, we went through a walnut tree, which you can see right here. These walnuts, actually, you find them on the ground. You can crack them open and you can eat them. And they're very good. Mostly, the ones that you find in the ground tend to be smaller, at least the ones that I found earlier this year, but maybe it was just before the season. But they still tasted good. And here, the last thing I saw before I got to the bottom and got off was the Soviet-era motor that was still driving this thing. I must admit, I'm not sure enjoy it is exactly the right word because, once again, still not excited about heights. But I am glad I went. I'm glad I got the pictures. It was some really breathtaking views from up there. And because it was going slowly, it didn't seem quite as bad as something that might have been moving faster. Next week, I'm going to show you pictures and give you some information on a Martisor music festival that I went to. It featured cultures from all over the region, not just Moldova. There were Romanian folk dancers there, Ukrainian, Russian, Bulgarian. So it was an interesting night. It was the last night of the 10 nights. It was March 10th. And so I'll show you pictures of that and give you more information on that next week. So I hope you enjoyed this trip to the park and my ride on the Ferris wheel.